So this one's a little bit of a ramble and just an observation that I made. Well, I was in an art gallery the other day because I live in Berlin and I'm pretty cool, so I just go to art galleries all the time. Anyway, I don't, but I made an observation, which was one that I feel like I've made before, but I feel like I'm better able to articulate it now. You go to an art gallery and you see the painting, or you see like the sculpture or whatever, and there's always a little blurb, and you read the blurb and it tells you a little story about the artist or whatever, and it also tells a story about their process and about the materials that they use, and how they age the wax, or how they use like different canvas materials, or like that sort of stuff. But it's always about like this sort of ritualistic process that they go through to elicit this like result or whatever. And I was thinking about that in the context of music, in that I just feel like before I make that point, I'm currently working on a few tracks at the moment, and it's been taking a while. In that I've been sitting on my MPC, and I've been working on a drum loop and working on it for like a day or two at a time, which it sounds crazy like when I say that out loud, and it's not the first time that that's happened, but it's really like perfecting and refining and making sure like everything's just sort of bouncing and moving like as well as it possibly can. And I get a lot of satisfaction from that. And at the end of the day, I'll come back and I've got like a 15-second loop or something, but it's a really, really good drum loop or whatever. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of coming out of those sort of intense, hyper-focused things, and then just coming back with my result and being like, holy crap, I could listen to that for days and weeks or whatever. But it's not an instant gratification sort of thing. And I was thinking about how I love that part of my process, like walking into making music and knowing that like, this could be something that I'll be able to whip up something in like a matter of minutes or hours or something, or I could be working on this track for days until I get somewhere. But it's still satisfying, and I feel like there's just this rush, and I feel like there's this, I'll throw in like a capitalistic like theme here, a little jab there, but I feel like there's this feeling and this desire to constantly, like, especially for musicians, I don't know why this is the case, but it's like we are meant to make music like a factory or something, and there's this understanding that that's what everyone does, like, and that's what you're meant to do. You're not meant to really take pleasure in the process, and not meant to think of the, like, it's Kanye West or whatever. Kanye West talking about how, like, I made like 12, it made 12 beats a day or something like that. Or people being like, I made like 3, it takes me like 8 hours to make a whole track or whatever. Maybe some people have a lot of like pleasure from doing that, but I really think that in the scheme of the maybe the eventual downfall of capitalism in Western society, but also as like a bit of rebellion against that, I feel like it's important to enjoy that process, because I feel like process is protest, and it's something that if you're worried about, if you're results focused and you're making this music and you're just trying to churn out as much as possible to to like whip up an EP or whip up an album and just get it out there and just churn it out, and like with the hope of not just purely from like an enjoyment point of view, but from like a success point of view, like you're putting it out there because you want to become like a big deal or whatever. But that's fine. But I felt a lot of guilt personally from taking so much time with my tracks and not being like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it's also okay. Well, I think it's okay to take your time with things, and I think that it's actually beneficial to you to really get in the zone and take your time with these things, because there aren't many other aspects of people's lives where you really have that pleasure. But I think more importantly is if you're putting music out there, or putting any out there, and you're aiming for success, you don't have any gauge of whether something's going to be successful. You can never really tell. I've made so many tracks where I'm like, this is going to make me 1 billion plays. Like, I'm going to be famous after this. It's guaranteed. And I put it out and it's like 100 plays. I'm like, what did I do wrong? It's like, I haven't done anything wrong. I've just like, I've had the focus wrong anyway. I shouldn't really be thinking about that. You've got to have it in your back of your mind, but you have no control over how your art is perceived. So if your ultimate goal is to get pleasure from the way that it's going to be received from people, you're not going to get anywhere like that. So you're best to focus on the process and just get the most enjoyment out of that process. If that means steeping your tapes in like wax and then putting them through an air fryer and then, I don't know, like connecting that air fryer to just like stupid shit. But if it's something that like you get like a 1% gain out of it, but it's more pleasurable, like it doesn't really matter about the end result. It's more about like the process and how you got there. Having a bit of a story, having a bit of like a ritual in the grand scheme of things, I think is better than trying to aim for success. But yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion. But yeah, I just think that's interesting. What point I was going to make? Yeah, and I guess the other point I was going to make about feeling like a production line is that I just don't think you can really be making quality art if you are... I think it's important to, like, especially with music, or not especially with music, but I think in general, like, you should be trying to just like make and just get stuff done and get it finished and all that sort of stuff. But because there is that, what is that study? It was like something about how you try and make if you focus a whole group to try and make like one perfect piece of work, as opposed to getting a group of people to just make as much work as they possibly can and compare the quality of the work. It's generally going to be the group that has made a lot of projects rather than the one that's focused on making the most perfect one. So this group is going to be the group that did like the most like projects in general end up making a better result. I can't remember the study, whatever, but you get my point. There is definitely something to be said about that, but I also don't like the idea of people being shamed about the idea of like taking pleasure and like taking the time with their art, because there's so little stories. I think it's like this because there's so many like loop packs and like MIDI packs and stuff, and people, it's just this idea that you're just trying to get stuff done as quickly as possible. It's like, do you even want to fucking be there if you're making music? Like, I do it because I once I kind of get through a few hurdles, I love it. Like, it just takes a lot of work for me to kind of get there, but that's where I get my pleasure from. So I think this idea of just being like really efficient, like maybe if you're like a mix engineer or if you're like a mastering engineer or something and you've got projects and you just need to get stuff like done as fast as possible, fair enough, go hell for leather. But I just don't think that as like if you're doing a creative aspect and you're trying to like make songs, I just don't think that there is much benefit in just trying to get stuff out as quickly as possible and quantity over quality sort of thing. There is a balance, so that's the point I was trying to make. But I don't really have any other points to make, but I hope that I'm just happy I got that off my chest. Really, I don't know if that's going to actually help anyone, but yeah. Thanks for listening. Ciao.